Women won't be in Formula 1 anytime soon, and here's why. In over 700 Formula 1 entries, only 5 of them have been female. But why is this? In today's current climate, surely women should be in Formula 1. Enter Jamie Chadwick, arguably the quickest and brightest prospect for women's racing. And if you don't believe me, just look at her current W Series campaign. She's won every single race this season, and she's looking to get herself a third W Series title. And then there's many people who say she should be in Formula 1. I'm going to tell you why I somewhat disagree. Now first, let's just remember, Formula 1 has always been an old rich man's sport, so female representation hasn't always been that strong. And another point to add to that is that a lot of people don't see Formula 1 as a proper sport. Let's think about that for a second. There's a reason we don't see male and female athletes competing against each other. Men have a serious biological advantage against women. There's a reason why the women's 100-meter sprint is almost a second slower than the men's 100-meter sprint. And in my opinion, since Formula 1 still isn't really regarded as a real sport, people kind of just dispute the fact that you need to be an athlete to compete in it. And you and me as F1 fans know that if you want to do well in this sport, you have to have a level of athleticism to compete at the highest level. Another Chadwick. Oh look, it's me. And then her current campaign in W Series. Now obviously she's doing very well, but the only way she can really move to Formula 1 is to move to Formula 3 and Formula 2, and then of course gather enough super license points. And if you don't know what super license points, I'll quickly tell you. Basically it's a set of rules and criteria you have to meet so you're actually good at racing to get into Formula 1. So a bozo like myself, if I had like 10 billion, cannot just go in there and buy a team and just drive. I have to actually have some experience. There's a few main ones you have to think about. One of them is like you have to score a certain number of points in junior formulas run by the FIA. Another one is you have to compete at least like 300 miles in a Formula 1 car, and then I have to be 18, a few other little nitpick ones. Hey, can I quickly ask you to subscribe? Thanks. And then another thing about W Series is that if you win the championship one year, you're excluded from earning any super license points the following year. So that means that right now, Jamie isn't gaining anything for a Formula 1 super license. Now, in my opinion, this might be a bit controversial, but I think Jamie Chadwick is a little bit mid. I think if you placed her in a Formula 3 or Formula 2 grid, she would be average, nothing insane or amazing. But once again, it comes down to biology. An example of this is if we throw into Formula 3, they don't have power steering. And as I said earlier, us as F1 fans know that driving a Formula 1 car, or any Formula car for that matter, is incredibly hard. And you have to be strong, have reaction times, and so on and so on. An example is if you brake in a Formula 1 car, it's something like the equivalent of leg pressing 50 kilograms every time you brake. It could be more than that, but still, that's insane. So again, let's go back to our caveman mentality. They went to go out and face dangers to gather food for the tribe. So therefore, they have to be quick, be strong, and have good reaction times. And that's the fundamentals of racing. So think about it. If you place a girl in an F1 car versus a man, the man is more likely to brake later and take the risks. And this is just on an instinctual level. Now, I'm not saying that Jamie Chadwick is slower than me, for example. She would destroy me in a race. But again, it all comes back to biology, and different things come into it. So then finally, I'm going to talk about women in F1 in general. In my opinion, F1 isn't quite ready for a full-time Formula 1 driver who's female. I don't think F1 is inherently sexist though. I think if you're the quicker driver, you're going to get the seat. Let's say Lewis Hamilton falls off and they see that Jamie Chadwick is quicker. I'm sure Mercedes would snap Jamie up in a heartbeat. But as I said earlier, the entire fundamental ability to accommodate a decent, at least Formula 1 driver is going to be hard. Because think about it, we all need representation in all the sports we have. So let's say Jamie Chadwick joins Formula 1. Now the entire community, the entire world for that matter, has hyped her up to be like the Lewis Hamilton of female racing drivers. So let's say she goes into a Williams seat, and she goes up against Nicholas Latifi. And we can all agree that Nicholas Latifi isn't the quickest driver. But let's say Nicholas destroys Jamie in the Williams seat. How is that going to look for women in Formula 1? Now, I'll cover how they can fix this in a minute. So that's the problem. The most hyped up female driver in decades gets to Formula 1, and then she fails. That's just not going to look good. So here's how they fix it. First up, there's W Series. They're currently the leading women's racing series, but I think they need to rebrand themselves. You see, right now, they're an F1 feeder series. That means their one and only goal is to get women, or drivers for that matter, into F1. Hence the name, feeder series. But like I said, they need to rebrand. I think they should scrap that whole idea of getting girls into F1. For now, I don't think it's quite ready for it. So what they should do is try and become the pinnacle of women's motor racing. Because right now they're in Formula 3 cars. So here's what they should do. Just make it Formula 2 cars. Give them power steering, just make the engine a bit quicker, make the racing exciting. So the way I like to put it is, imagine there's NBA and then there's WNBA. For now, treat it as the WNBA. Make sure the cars are closer to F1 so it can really be a good feeder series for females. On paper, there's nothing stopping a girl going to F1 at any time. But like I said, there isn't the funding for women in F1, and if a girl goes to F1 and completely fails, it's going to look horrible on the entire female racing community. So once they've upgraded these cars, W Series will start to come out of this little bubble they've formed. We all know Jamie Chadwick is good, but do we? I mean, she's against other female drivers who we haven't really seen stack against other people. So once I get out of this kind of Formula 3-ish kind of vibe, we can kind of see how they do against others. But hopefully Jamie proves me wrong and we do see women in Formula 1 pretty soon, but I don't think it will happen. But let me know what you think down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out this one right here about Sergio Perez and why he could win the Formula 1 World Championship. Click it. I know you'll love it. It's a great video. Go on, click it. It's right there. You'll love it. Trust me.